A note to our listeners. The views and opinions expressed by our guests and hosts on the BLKFLA podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the official positions or views of any organizations, companies, or affiliations they may be associated with. Any statements made are personal opinions and should not be construed as representing their respective employers or organizations. As always, thanks for listening.
If revolution was a movie, I'd be theme music. Time to ignite what I spit is like a fluid. Stepping into it, fixed raised such a glorious design. Marching into the biggest fight of our lives. Time to spoil the revolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, family and friends, welcome to the BLKFLA experience. We are the cultural archive for the Black political movement in the state of Florida, where our purpose is to help you reimagine a Florida where Black people are able to live in freedom, equity, and authenticity. We are your hosts for tonight. I'm Jamal STEELE, and my sometimes Y host,
the dopest bitch on the planet, Rhyane Wagner.
That's it. That's it. That's how we doing it over here.
It's a hell of an intro, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And we are taking this time to dive into all things Black politics and Black culture. Let's get into it. I am honored. And honor is a real word. It's a real word and it's a genuine word. I'm honored to have our two guests on for tonight. One of our guests is a return guest. One of our guests is a new guest to the podcast, but definitely not new to the BLKFLA movement. Actually, fun story, kids. There wouldn't be a BLKFLA movement without this person. That's fun. There's a fun story behind that. We'll get into that later. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all the friends, we have on the call the 2018 Democratic nominee for Florida State Attorney General, as well as Democratic nominee for Hillsborough County Commissioner in 2024. Your good friend of mine, Shan Shaw, is on the call this evening. What's up?
No, I'm happy to be here, brother. You call and I answer, so I'm happy to be here.
Listen,
I don't have an introduction like Ms. Wagner because I don't cuss until I know who the audience is, but it's just me.
It's too late. I've been doing this too long.
It's just me. It's just me
at this point.
Listen, but no, that's how literally, y'all. That's how it always is with me and Sean. We did this bus tour in 2022 around these maps. Sean was literally flying in from DC, for the Tampa stop that we did. Flew in from DC, hopped in a Uber and skedaddled over to the stop just because I called.
Just because I called. People that do the work, when they ask me to help, I help. People that don't do the work and just do the show might not get a phone call back. That's very simple how I operate.
Listen, kids, moral of the story, do that work and you meet great people.
Do the work.
Listen, we also have on the podcast with us the City Commissioner for District 5 in the city of Orlando, and founder of Change for the Community. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all friends, it is Commissioner Shan Rose in the building. Ooh, what's up?
Good evening, everyone. I don't like Sean said, I don't know my audience, so I got to be careful. So I'm just Commissioner Shan Rose. Sometimes people call me Shaniqua because that's like my government name.
Listen, that is the government's. So before we get into tonight's events, since we are on the Great Commissioner, let's go ahead and do our segment. It's called the BLKFLA Top 5. It's two top fives. So your first top 5 is top 5 MCs. Go.
Top 5 who?
MCs.
The pressure.
I know.
That's a lot of pressure. Are we talking local, state, national?
All time.
Oh.
Your top 5 favorite rappers.
Pass. I'm a call a friend. Sean, I need your help.
Gosh, I did this before. I'll give you 3.
Okay.
Tupac's on that list for me. Andre 3000 is on that list for me. And quite frankly, Young Jeezy's on that list for me because I like it. It ain't gotta be KRS-One and Jay-Z all the time. Young Jeezy's on my list.
No, it doesn't.
So there's my list.
It doesn't at all.
Okay. So I'll do the last 2 then, since you said not Jay-Z, but I'll say Jay-Z and say Plies.
See, I like it.
Shout out to Plies. Listen, Commissioner Rose has a very awesome relationship with Plies. They have very awesome kinship. Like how Sean is with me, Shan calls Plies, and Plies just shows up. Like it just shows up for classic.
His social media is hilarious.
Oh my God, yes. He's the political pundit I didn't know I needed.
He's hilarious. I love it.
He is.
Listen, so here's your other top five organizers, political figures, or cultural icons that have made you into the organizer and elected official that you are.
Shout out to Black Voters Matter. Shout out to Commissioner Mabel Butler. God rest her soul. 5. 3 would be, I would say the Black Caucus. And for me, it's also the Democratic Women's Caucus. They've helped me with a lot of my backbone and organizing and giving me strength, giving me tips. That's 4. And living in the Paramore community. And I would just say, because living in a high poverty, high crime, you have to learn how to organize. You have to learn how to do better, want better, and help other people want better for their community. So I would say just living in the Paramore community would be part of my top 5 of what organizing means to me.
Shout out to that. Listen, shout out to you also saying living in the Paramore community. I done been in the Paramore community knocking doors with Commissioner Rose, so I know and understand what that means. Listen, and Ryan will tell you this. I call Shan the mayor of Black Orlando.
Yep.
Because she run the spot.
Yeah.
Like, for real.
And I would say, like, it you know, and I will go into a little bit more about like my story of like how I became here into politics. But it's one thing working in government, so I used to work City of Orlando in government. It's one thing to work in government and say the government sees how a Black community could do better. But when you actually live in that Black community, and you can be like, well, we don't necessarily need that. And if we're going to improve on this, then you got to improve on something else. And so I think organizing and being able to tell folks like, okay, here's how you do this. And then if it doesn't work, then you tell me, right? And so like, I live in that space. So here's this organization to go and tell me it didn't work, and then I could fix it, right? And I've been that way for a while, but like truly like living in Paramore, being able to say, you know, I'm not just advocating for the community, I'm advocating for myself too. You know, like even in this role, the district is bigger than where I live. I have to tell people like, and that's always the thought process, because people talk a lot about Paramore, but don't understand that Paramore has a whole community redevelopment agency. So it has a whole governing body within the city of Orlando. It's not to tell folks like, you know, along the campaign trail recently, I had to tell folks like home is always going to be taken care of, right? So if I'm going outside my door and it's a pothole, I'm going to call and make sure it's taken care of. But how do I make sure the rest of the Black community, the rest of West Orlando can understand, like, here's how you advocate for yourself. Here's how you tell me, right? You can't assume. And I think that's been part of my like organizing, why I say I put it on my top 5 of how I got here, because, you know, if you can't live in a space that government is supposed to be in every inch of a community. Like if you live here, there's a problem, there's an issue, you got to report it. You can't assume because a car accident happens. And I use that as an example because people think that because a car accident happens in a place, government's just supposed to just go and study that. No, like accidents happen everywhere, right? Accidents happen in crazy places. You could be driving outside of the library and an accident can happen. We're not going to study the traffic flow and the data and say, okay, how do we prevent another accident from there? So like, that's why I said, like, living in Paramore has given me my true, like, advocating and advocacy and, like, more getting involved in government and organizing from the other side.
I don't know anybody else in Orlando. You know, it's a few, you know, there's a few people I can name. I don't know, and Ryan will agree with me on this. I don't know anybody else in Orlando that really gets down in the trenches, that really looks after Black Orlando like how you do. Like for real. And it's a testament to that. And it's also a testament to the friendship that we have, especially during the time periods when I was state organizing manager for BBM. It was just, you know, we had to do a stop in Orlando. It got to the point where I didn't even have to say it anymore. Cliff would just look at me and just be like, hey, call Shan. See where Shan at. Like, what's Shan doing? Where Shan gonna put us at? What shopping plaza is Shan gonna put us in today? And that's just a testament to the work that you do. Before we get into tonight's topic, this is actually for both Shan and Ryan. And it's a quick spiel. I'm gonna name two names, and y'all gonna tell me the importance of these people when I name these two names. The first name is Mabel Butler. Second name is Beverly Colson Neal. Go.
Miss the Mabel Butler Road. When I first met her, that's how she introduced herself to me. I met her because of my stepfather. She used to come to the house, and she's just, I loved her to death. She was herself, whether she was out in community or, you know, in private spaces. And then Beverly Neal, I was her Ryan, as she called me. When I first moved to Florida, I didn't know anybody, and I had to basically start over just connecting with community. Coming from a city that's, I think, Blacker than Detroit now. I'm from Memphis. And so moving to Orlando, it's much smaller, and, you know, it's Black, but it's not, I feel like I had to go looking for Black people. And so I got connected to community through her, and she got me right. She told me the ins and outs. Because I originally started my organizing tenure in the state of Florida. I feel like if you cut your teeth in Florida, you can make it anywhere. DC's a piece of cake. With the tests, the many tests that Florida puts in front of you. And then I ultimately ended up meeting local electeds, meeting Geraldine Thompson, rest in peace. It just kind of snowballed after that, and getting a really good sense of the politics of Orlando County Commission and City Commission, the politics of the state, really. It began with Beverly Colson Neal, and I'm forever grateful to her for that. And then I just, you know, I loved Mabel Butler to death. She was funny to me. I just, I love hanging around my elders, in the stories that they tell. And so anywhere I am, I think that historical knowledge is incredibly important. Because once it's gone, it goes with them. So it's important to share those stories with the next generation of young people, and really sitting and listening to the storytellers, the oral tradition of Orlando. And Orlando's unique. Like, Florida's very much a Caribbean influence state, and Black diaspora, Caribbean diaspora, Puerto Rico, Cuba, but it's also Jamaica, the Bahamas. Like, that was something that has nuance to it, especially if you're working in politics in Florida that I didn't experience back home in Tennessee, where you have your more traditional Deep South politics kind of running the agendas in back home. So I'll leave it at that.
So Commissioner Mabel Butler's mom to me, so she adopted me as her last daughter, and she was the first Black woman elected at the city and the first Black woman elected at the county here in Orange County. She brought things to Orlando from Florida Classic to Meals on Wheels, you name it. I would say West Orlando benefited from her social, because she was a social worker before she became commissioner. So living in the community, being able to say, and being able to go from having clients to being able to say, what services am I missing and what gaps am I missing to fill those gaps? That's Commissioner Mabel Butler. And for me, Beverly Neal has been the turning point, God rest her soul, has been the turning point for young people in Orlando, if you ask me. Making sure she identified Black young leaders to be able to give us seats at the table, being able to show us how to navigate, being able, she would risk her whole organization. If she believes in a young person, she'd risk the whole organization. One thing she was strategic in is being able to gain power of Black organizations and then bring young people on. So I wouldn't have been a part of NAACP hadn't been for Ms. Bev. I wouldn't be a part of NTBW if it hadn't been for Ms. Bev. I wouldn't be politicking, phone banking, knowing how to pick up the phone and here's a script. You're going to dial these numbers, you're going to read this script, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to tell you the way to talk to how do you, navigate through a conversation. So I think that's what Ms. Bev has done. And I think I'm grateful for her opening the door for the next generation to be able to lead. So I am the youngest elected commissioner in the whole Orange County out of all the municipalities that we have. But she created that space. She created that, don't be scared, don't be timid. I'm going to take you to this room. I'm going to take you to this person. And it wasn't just that, you sit down and sometimes you just come and sit at this table. She, whatever organization she'd be a part of, she'd buy a table and say, come sit here. And she'd introduce you and network you around the room. Same thing with Commissioner Mabel Butler for me. And, I'm grateful because of the children. So she has a boys club and she has a girls club. She has a brotherhood and a sisterhood. I'm the only one of the kids, so to speak, that have been able to pass that torch. So I'm the first one there's been several that have tried to run for office and I'm the first one. So sometimes I feel like, okay, everybody's looking to me to fill these Commissioner Mabel Butler shoes. It's like, okay, it's a lot of pressure, but no pressure at the same time. So, both of them, I could say, were two powerful women who believed in raising the next leadership. What does that look like? I'm not going to hold on to this power. We were a whole group of the youngest elected NAACP in the state. Our president, our vice president, treasurer, secretary, Orange County was the youngest entire executive committee in the state because of Ms. Neal when she passed the torch a couple of years ago. So that's what I would say, two pioneer women who believed in the next generation.
And the way you were saying about Miss Beverly, listen, I'm gonna hand you this phone bank. Listen, I'm gonna hand you this walk list. We're gonna go knock these doors and we're gonna go talk to these. That sounds just like her too. For real. Like literally. It's like I can hear her voice. For real. And the reason I want to ask that question is because it's rare for me to have the two reasons that I know Orlando politics on the same episode. So I was like, let me go ahead and get that out the way because it's a great way to honor the two of them and honor the legacy that they have already laid down for not just y'all two, but countless others in Orlando. I talk to people that deal in Black Orlando politics all the time. And if you mention either one of the names, they're going to give you a good 10 to 15 minute story. So yeah, let's begin, kids. All right. All politics are local. That's our thing for this evening. We are here to really have this discussion around not just what happened at the beginning of this month with municipal elections across the country. We also did have a few municipal elections here of our own in the state of Florida. Two key ones that people were really looking at were City of Orlando City Council elections, as well as the City of Miami mayoral and City Council elections. Shout out to the fact that both elections, one for Orlando as far as a specific seat, and this mayoral situation in the City of Miami, both of these are maneuvering to a runoff in December. We will dig a little bit more into that as well. And these are conversations that I've honestly had with the three of you all on different occasions around the fact that we have to start making our community see the importance in local and municipal elections. I know that with, for example, peeking into the city council race that happened in Orlando, yes, there was a lot of conversation around it. There were a lot of debates around it, but when it was all said and done, people were talking about the voter turnout and how the voter turnout itself was pretty low, but it could have been a lot better, especially due to the particular seats that were up for election. We also have, on the flip side, the City of Miami, where people were stating that despite what the actual numbers were, this was one of the highest voter turnouts for a municipal election in the City of Miami in the last couple of decades. And so peeking into that and having a greater understanding of municipal politics and city electoral politics, I want to come to you first, Mr. Shaw. In 2018, of course, you ran as the Democratic nominee for Attorney General for the state of Florida. You also served a considerable nice time on the state house. 2024, you decided that you wanted to make a go at municipal politics by running for Hillsborough County Commissioner. What gave you the inspiration as well as the gumption, if you will, to say, despite the fact that I have already done a lot of statewide work and I'm very well known across the statewide scope, I need to come home and deal with home as it relates to the political infrastructure and the political happenings that are happening in Hillsborough County and in particular in my own district?
The answer I'm going to give is Sean. So I don't want it to get twisted that I'm being obnoxious, because I'm about to be. I have zero interest in Tallahassee. I do not think that you can get much done. It doesn't excite me. It does not challenge me. It does not make my blood run warm. It does not make the hair on the back of my neck stand up I hate it. Tallahassee is where good things go to die. And Florida, this is Florida. This is what Florida is. Now, I'm not saying we don't need wonderful legislators and we need senators. It just don't have to be me. One of the reasons I ran for Attorney General was my frustration at the process. And that was before DeSantis was governor. You can imagine how bad it is now. I got sick of skinning and grinning to these people that didn't like me and I didn't like them. I got sick of having to act like I had respect for people that I didn't, or act like people had respect for me that I know they didn't. I just got sick of the game, and I had nothing to return home to. To get stuff done in Tallahassee, you have to kind of do things in a certain way. And I wasn't going to do, and I'm not trying to say that I'm Malcolm X here, but I wasn't going to take the votes that it took to bring home the money that some do. That is, I'm okay with some people that being their strategy. Some people operate very well in that. I did not, because I didn't think that's what my district sent me to do. Black people in Tampa, urban core of Tampa, didn't send me to sell out to go get a Boys and Girls Club and bring it back to my district and vote against everything that was important to them. So that's a long way of saying that I thought I could make a difference locally. I thought I could make a difference. Shan knows this very well. When something goes wrong, you don't call your legislator. You don't call someone you don't call your congressperson. You call your city council or county commissioner. When there is a pothole, I wasn't getting that call. When there is a light that doesn't work, when someone wants to yell at somebody the people that get the calls, because they're the ones that touch the people, were city council people and county commissioners. And also, and this is a big point, you could go to their offices and they were there. You couldn't come visit me unless you wanted to drive 4 hours to Tallahassee and get 10 minutes of my time while I was doing 1,000 other things. So I thought that you could make a difference locally, and particularly in a state like Florida, where I didn't think you could get anything done in Tallahassee. And also statewide, I didn't think the math was where a Democrat like myself could win statewide. So you got a mix of reality, a mix of what I thought I could get done, a mix of what I was willing to do, what I like to do, why I got into politics in the first place. And, I took a big break from the attorney general race to the county commission race, but I just, I kind of relished the idea of being local. But of course, little did I know that my county would turn red. And here we are anyway, and got caught in Florida politics again anyway. But that doesn't diminish or change why I ran for the county commission. It was because I thought I could like traffic. Traffic is who fixes traffic? It's the county commission of Orange County or Hillsborough. I mean, it is these problems that people have every day. Abortion is a big deal. People don't have that problem every day. These things that touch people every day that's what motivates people to want to call and complain and say, I need better. These other issues sometimes are, these touch button ideological fights that happen in Tallahassee. They're very important. Right. But people don't sit in an hour and a half of abortion traffic between I-4 and Tampa and Orlando every day. They sit and they want a fix to how to get to a job and why a bus won't take them and why this and why that. And sometimes that gets lost. And I just thought I could affect some of those problems that people really experience every day in local office.
So like one of the things for me, using this as an example, on a federal level, we had the government shutdown, and with the government shutdown, one of the byproducts of that, of course, were SNAP benefits being cut off. Many of our county and local municipalities were having meetings and having discussions around, what can we do as far as tapping into reserve funds or tapping into emergency funds to alleviate this SNAP issue. Jacksonville being one of the examples. Shout out to City Councilman Rodman Johnson and Jacoby Pittman for introducing a bill on the floor that would have essentially had us tap into $2 million of the reserve funds in the Jacksonville reserve budget to alleviate this SNAP issue that was going on. They did have one of the financial individuals from the finance department for the city of Jacksonville do the facts and figures, and that's actually a $30 million. That's a $30 million undertaking for just Duval County, because as we all know on the call, county government is consolidated in the city government for Jacksonville. So that's why we get your 14 district seats as well as your 5 at-large seats. The 5 at-large seats originally being the county seats that were the county commission. But yeah, like they were talking $30 million, and here we are presenting this bill for $2 million, trying to help as much as we can to get people's SNAP benefits taken care of. I do actually also, Commissioner Rose, I want to throw that same question to you, because in 2022 you did have an opportunity to run for state house in 2022, but also in 21, as well as this year you ran for city commission for the city of Orlando. Why is knowing your history, and which you tapped into it a little bit at the beginning, and you working for the city of Orlando is a key piece of it, but also why is city municipal politics important to you as well?
So I ran in 21. COVID was my wake-up call. So working at the city of Orlando, I have a master's degree in public administration and I have a bachelor's degree in business management. And so I understand by the book how private sector and public sector kind of should work together. So a lot of my master's assignments I did on local government and local policies. And so I'm reading this book, and these books and all of it, and everything I'm reading is telling you how government should function. And so I'm working at the city and I'm like, well, the government is not functioning the way this book says it should be functioning, right? Like they're not doing these things. They're not hearing from us and they're not listening to us. So COVID comes. I leave the city in 2019. COVID comes 2020. And everything was based around Orange County Convention Center. And so I live in a community just in Paramore by itself, where 60%, based on the data at the time, 60% of the residents did not have their own means of transportation. So at the time when they started COVID testing, it was at the convention center. If I have to take a bus from a community, that's an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours worth of transportation to get to testing where I could have infected anybody on the bus. And then what if I was sick? Then what do I do? Right. And so I was able to I was able to advocate. We started, speak up and say, hey, we need to be doing COVID testing, and inside the community started that. Then we rolled out masks. So first we rolled out masks. I was able, and then I realized we rolled out masks first, then we rolled out testing. In between the two, while they were happening, I realized that they were missing the Black community. They were missing the folks who mattered the most, unless it was getting in front of a camera to say, hey, look at me and look at what I'm doing. So I received a shipment. I was running my nonprofit. I received a shipment of about 30,000 masks, and I was able to connect with the nonprofits in the community. Okay. COVID vaccination came, and here comes the same thing. Y'all telling people to ride an hour and a half, 2 hours. So in that moment, I realized my local commissioner was not in tune and tapped into the community as they said, because if you are, you should be able to call your state legislator. You should be able to call your congressperson and say, hey, I need this favor. I was able to do that. Shout out to Senator Bracey at the time. I reached out and I was like, hey, we need to do testing in the Black community. The convention center is too far. We need to be able to be in these churches the same way, go praise and worship on Sunday. We should be able to go and get vaccinated so that we can return to a normal community and normal society here. And I was able to subcontract with the state to be able to do COVID vaccination events. But I didn't do your typical, I did churches, I did YMCAs, but I did your atypical. I partnered with a nightclub and we did shot for shot. So if you got a shot, you came and you got a voucher to come back for shots, right? And so I realized that young people were getting vaccinated, right? Because that was the thing. Young people are not going to get vaccinated no matter what you do, no matter how you try. So start thinking outside of the box. Started going to some of the businesses that I was literally at a taco shop. Hey, can I come and do vaccinations here? So you can have it, because what it does is for those who want to get vaccinated, it shows your commitment as a business to help and make sure people are safe. And so we were doing vaccination events all over. And so it was 2020 that made me realize my generation was not included in any kind of planning that happens in our community, whether it's seats at tables, community organizing. My generation, so full transparency, I got terminated for the city for fighting for Paramore, using my position at the city to be able to help the community better. Being able to say, hey, you got a trash pickup, I'm going to send you straight to the manager at the trash. Hey, you got a retention pond issue, I'm going to send you straight to the retention pond people so that they can fix those problems. And so it's in black and white. That was my reason. And so there was a disconnect between my commissioner, my advocacy, and how you make the community better. And so it was funny because we were at a whole Vote Fest event and I was asked, I heard you want to run against me. And I was like, well, what's the reason? I said, well, what have you done for young people lately? And the response I got, like, y'all brace yourself. What about the house you live in? And I'm like, I pay a mortgage every month. How does that impact the young generation and the next generation? Where I live means nothing, right? Because I pay a mortgage every month. I was qualified for down payment assistance. And, you didn't give me a house. And so it was in that moment I said, okay, that means my generation will not have a seat at the table, because if that's all you could think of is building a house is what the only thing that impacts the young generation, then you're sadly disconnected from the young generation. And so I ran in 21. I think that was probably the fuel to my fire, like telling me that you gave me a house, but you did. Like, that was my fuel. I was like, okay, I want to run, because if that's all you think of my generation, you're sadly mistaken. We are I'm a millennial. We are the highest educated generation, right? So if that's all you think of us is that we just want somewhere to live, you sadly mistaken. We want businesses. We want to be able to share the wealth. We want to be part of the Billionaires Club. And so if that's all you could think, okay, it's time for me to run. So I ran at 21. I wasn't successful, but everything is in God's timing. Not winning gave me the opportunity to learn how to politic better. And you can't do politics if you don't know how to politic. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care if they tell you, I could guarantee you a win on this election. If you can't politic, you can't get anything done. If you don't know what it means to sit at, on the opposite, sit at the table with a Republican and say, hey, these are the desires of my community. This is what I need. And so I've been able to do that. Like, when I didn't win, I realized, okay, so there is a gap. There are gaps, and how do I still meet those gaps? So when Senator Rick Scott, I reached out to his office. I said, listen, we are suffering. I want you to come and see the community, because every time the Republican Party shuts down an appropriation, I need you to understand, and I need you to physically see what you're shutting down. So I took Senator Scott's aide and I said, okay, listen, you are well protected. You in the car with me. I drove him around the community. He got to see the gambling. He got to see the prostitution. He got to see the homelessness. He got to see the drug addiction. So in that moment, when you get to experience live in action, in person, and say, well, when people come and ask for appropriations, these are how you better, this is what the money will go to better the community. We're not just writing reports and writing appropriation requests, making up stuff, right? Like, we've got real life requests, and here are those real life experiences. And so I did take a state house run in 22 because we had a lazy legislator, right? And the voters proved that lazy legislator was lazy because that person did not get reelected, right?
Right.
So, but I realized, okay, I'm going to still advocate. I'm going to still work on working to better the community. And because there's a lot of work to do. I have become what you call the emergency response. My nonprofit has become the emergency response organization. So whatever the natural disaster look like, from COVID to hurricane. So if a hurricane happens right now, my nonprofit gets called to go do hurricane cleanup. I was able to hire over 200 people during Hurricane Ian. We cleaned up the community, but it was in that moment I got to learn things that I didn't know. So most people don't know insurance doesn't cover if a tree falls in your backyard and it doesn't touch a structure, insurance doesn't cover that. Well, your average senior cannot afford, one, they're not even of health status to be able to go out there and clean up the debris, rake up the leaves. And two, if their insurance is not going to cover cutting up that tree and disposing of that tree, how will it get disposed? And once you leave one fallen tree, everything else starts deteriorating around it. And so being able to hire people in a time of crisis, right? When Ian hit, there were a lot of companies closing their doors. They didn't know when they were going to reopen because of disaster. I continue to serve. Opportunity became available in 2024 due to the removal of my predecessor. And so I was not going to run in full transparency because I made a commitment. 21's election with my predecessor got nasty, and I made a full commitment. You know what? At 25, I'm gonna let some brave soldier go ahead and fight that battle with her. I had made that commitment. My family, my friends, those in my close circle. Jamil, you knew that. Jamil, I was not running again. 25, did the same. Find somebody else to do it.
That baby looked me in the face. That baby looked me in the face and said, "No, not at all."
And listen, I have witnesses. I was like, I will help the person that's going to run because I know, secret hiding places and, I've learned things, but no, get somebody else to do it. Right. And so 24 came. I told myself, I said, the thing about it is if I run at 24, the possibility of me running against her again at 25 is probably inevitable. Do I really want to go down this path? So then I started talking to a couple of folks and really realizing that, okay, here's a time. And so Commissioner Mabel Butler was one of those individuals that I spoke with and said, okay, now is a better time. You don't have to deal with her, right? Right now, for this 24 election, you don't have to deal with her. And in that time, I'd run twice, so I had a voting base, right? So people knew me from voting for me for 2 elections. So those people had those 500, roughly 546 people had become my stronghold. Okay, now I got a base, and I'm building a base, and I'm building a base and getting to learn more people because I never stopped my community work and my advocacy. So I win this special election. And I'm serving. For me, the joy and pleasure of serving is I used to work at the city. So your average person who gets elected, it takes them a year, maybe 2, to actually learn their role. The funny running joke around any government, do you know what the bathroom is, right? So, that's always a running joke in politics. It takes you a while to learn the ins and outs. Well, I know everybody, right? I had the relationships because as a resident and as a nonprofit, I still had those communications, still had those conversations. So I ran in 24. One, it's been a joy to serve, but what I've been intentional on is serving the entire district, not just one community. Like I tell folks, I live in Paramore. Paramore is going to always be straight, right? But there's a whole nother community on the west side of John Young that is the forgotten communities, the Ivy Lanes, the Metro West, right? Because people think Metro West they hear the name Metro West, they say rich people. No, there's all types of people that live in the district. So I've been intentional about serving the whole district. I will say this District 5 election was the highest voter turnout in over a decade. Number-wise, statistically, I do believe it would have been higher, but there was voter apathy. Voters were like, so you heard one or two things. So I heard a lot of, you gonna win anyway, I'm not gonna go vote. Or, this is too nasty, and if this goes into a runoff, I'll decide of the lesser of 2 evils. Because it had gotten so nasty. And so I think, how do you change that dynamic? Because obviously I got to run again in 4 years, right? How do you change the dynamic to not allow it to get nasty, one? And I would say, for anybody that wants to run, I think analyzing, and I start telling young people now that young people that come to me and say, hey, I want to run for something one day. What does that look like? Know who your friends are, know who you surround yourself in, know who's in your inner circle, because those become the riffraff of your election. It's never, and if you're a good person, it's about, who are you associated with, who are you affiliated with, and how can that determine the future of your political career?
You touched on it briefly, the importance of the inner workings of the city, right? So talk to me a little bit about, we do a good job, a decent job, I wouldn't say good, a decent job of teaching people how to call their federal legislator, right? But we don't really go through the nooks and crannies of city government, right? And we don't really reinforce the importance of city politics, school board even, or even my next question is, why is it important that people get involved with meetings around city budgets, right? Because a lot of people don't even know Orlando has $1 billion plus budget. And what that goes to is a very important issue that communities need to know about, particularly after the 2020 redistricting process, right? You have to connect. This is not just about somebody coming to, we had to quell a lot of misconceptions about the census, about people coming to your door. And honestly, a lot of white folks will fill out their census, but we, for some reason, struggle with that and not really connect the dots with how resources get to communities, why it's important to attend these budget meetings at the city level, because 9 times out of 10, how those resources get distributed at the city level is far more important than even the state budget. So could you kind of walk us through what that means, how that shows up, what it means for somebody to show up to provide testimony, for example, to protect their community, talk about what their needs are. Like Sean said, like this, abortion's here. Not that it's not important, but it's here, right? That's high level. But like infrastructure is every day.
So I've been intentional on what are your kitchen table conversations. And so that was been a thing for me since 21. If I can come to your door and ask you what can I do for you and how can I help you, I've been intentional on that. Communication has got to change and our messaging has to change. I think the party talks about the state and the federal issues, and they're not focused on the local issues until it hits our front door. So for example, when SNAP, came to a halt, that's when they decided, oh, wait, we got to go ask our local government for funds. Oh, wait, we got to start doing food drives because we need to be, feeding our workers. And so I think that's where, my opinion, the parties, and I'd say both. I won't just say one versus the other, right? But that's where the parties have to step up and say they've got to be involved in local politics. I'll say this. Here in Orlando, the Republican Party learned a lesson quick. What works on the state and federal level will not work on the local level. So we had one of my colleagues voted out because, just like Sean mentioned, state and national issues, they did a mailer to local residents during a city election with state and federal topics that got him voted out, right? And so I think what does have to happen is that the party has to have local conversations all the time, not local conversations as a reaction. You've got to be able to engage with the locals. I'll say this. Congressman Frost and State Representative Escamani both have a local connection. And so they were able to help not bringing out their volunteers to go knock doors to let folks know there was an election taking place. So, shout out to them for that. But, both parties have to wake up and say local elections and local politics are important. I've been intentional on, however you want to slice it, Classy Weekend has always been an issue here in Orlando. And so I took a stance this weekend, and it wasn't because of politics, because somebody said, oh, she's just running. No, I'm not running. I just got reelected, right? It's because I witnessed it with my own 2 eyes. Like Ryan said, how are our tax dollars being spent? And what I witnessed was disgusting, and it was egregious. And had I had to have a conversation, it would go in one ear and come out the other. As an elected, as a resident, or anything, I watched 10 to 15 officers parked in a parking lot with no one there. Like when I said there was not a person tailgating in sight. And so that goes to judgment. And are we making the best judgment decisions? Are we highly encouraging everybody? It just doesn't have to be police officers. Our city government workers being encouraged to use the best judgment and the best way for our dollars to be spent on the local level. And so, I wrote a post disgusted. And of course, guess what the Republicans ran and said? Oh my God, she hates law enforcement. No, oh my God, I don't hate law enforcement, but I do, as a taxpayer, want to ensure, because with or without a commissioner, I'm still a taxpayer, right? As a commissioner, I pay my taxes like everybody else. And I want to make sure that my tax dollars are spent the proper way. And so that's what it takes. And I think what has to happen is not losing your way along the way. Being able to say, I was an organizer before. And I think that might be what sets me apart. I think that's what sets Congressman Frost apart as well. If you organize before you become elected, what got you there is not going to change. No matter how, you know how to act in certain rooms and you know the way to get stuff done. Because shout out to Congressman Frost, in a highly Republican DC, he's been able to still bring home money, right? All the years he's been elected. And so it shows, yes, when you get where you're supposed to go, you know how to politic, but locally at home, you still have to be an advocate. And so not losing that advocacy is what's important. And being the true person who people elected is what it takes, and I tell people around me, like, make sure you shaking me, right? Like, I'm okay with baby shaking syndrome. When it comes to Shan, like, you change, like, tell me, remind me. And then sometimes I may have to tell you why I did something, why I voted a certain way. I may have to have, I've had some hard conversations with some of my strong supporters. I voted this way because I knew what the outcome was. I voted that way because I knew what the outcome was. I knew that in order for me to get something from my district, what would be the outcome? And I knew sometimes there's votes that won't go anywhere, right? And so it's having those conversations with people who are around to say, okay, this is why I did that. You do have to play politics, but what is the end goal? Are you going to be able to get for your community? Are you going to be able to bring home? And so I've been true in that. I've been myself, right? And no matter what room, and somebody said it best a couple weeks ago, you are the Shan that anybody describes when I first meet you. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, so-and-so told me about you. And, I was like, okay, is she going to be a different person? Is she going to, sit up? Is she going to be totally different than what they told me? Or no, I'm going to be exactly whoever described me, even the bad ones, because you might see the bad side. Somebody might say something bad about me, but ask me why they feel that way about me. And I'm going to tell you why, right? So I think being able to stay true to myself, to be able to explain to individuals why it's important to come to government. And in my post, I was intentional. Like, we do a lot of social media complaining. Like, take that complaint and come to city council and complain to everybody else. Because then it just looks like it's Shan the complainer, right? Because if it's only me coming and saying, I don't like this, and this, then it's only me, right? It's not, then some people may say, yeah, you're speaking for you're elected to speak for your community. No, if your community isn't coming to speak for themselves when it comes, even if it's just one, if your community doesn't come to speak for themselves, then anything I do is it's in vain as an elected. And so and that was one of the things I was intentional on, like, making sure I stay connected with the people who elect me. So when there is an issue, hey, here's the white flag, I need y'all. I need y'all to get off this internet and come down here. And I gave people 3 weeks notice. Come down here and voice your concern about how you feel, how I feel. I'm going to take the hit, right? Because at the end of the day, even though everybody's my colleague from, even though they technically, all the directors work for me, the police chief and all that, those are my colleagues. We're all in this to make a better community, better city. If y'all are not coming to complain, then it's just me. So for me, right, it's staying in tune with the things I said that I was going to speak up for, the things I said, but it's also holding the community accountable, because I was very intentional in my post. Like, y'all need to stop complaining on social media. This is not going to get y'all. Here's the link, sign up. Here's what you do. Here's how you do it. So I'm going to prove a point. Either people going to show up or they're not. Either they are or they're not. And if they're not, then that means, then who am I fighting for? If you can't come and show up for yourself, who exactly am I fighting for? And I think that's what's intentional and what's important in serving, especially on the local level.
So first and foremost, I'm very glad that you brought that incident up, because that was actually going to be my next question. So kudos to you on that. I'm actually going to come to you, Sean. So one of the things that Commissioner Rose brought up is messaging and the party no matter what party it is. But we've had this conversation numerous occasions. How the Dems, whether it's on a national or state or local level, has a messaging issue. The messaging issue at times has gotten better. The messaging issue at times has gotten still and remains the same. The thing that stood out to me was messaging around local politics and messaging around local issues. And so what do you think the messaging should be when in dealing for the Dems or the Dems? We'll speak on the Dems.
Yeah,
what
I
do
don't
you
care
think
about
the
other party. I can't control them. I would tell you if I had an answer to that. I'd probably be running for something statewide right now, but I am involved in a lot of messaging organizations and the Democratic stuff around the state, I guess. It's always been my opinion that the stuff that touches people the most is what you ought to be messaging around. And Democrats get caught playing defense a lot and thinking that we have to defend weird shit. And meanwhile, Republicans are running circles around us. So I've just thought, the affordability stuff I think is important. I mean, it's obvious stuff is more expensive than it should be. And nationally, I think the affordability message is one of the reasons Democrats did well around the country. But the things that touch people and affect their lives the most, rather than the arguments that you can't win are what right. Democrats spend all their time on. And I'm not saying that they're not valiant fights, but I'm just saying it's not what you base your entire messaging apparatus around. You need to be talking about the price of eggs, the price of milk, and why all these actions and the SNAP benefits. And there's a reason the shutdown ended. It's because it was getting extremely painful because it was just so expensive, and the SNAP benefits and the messaging around that was in our favor. But I just think sometimes we get caught in weird places, fighting weird battles, fighting battles that cannot be won, that are just theoretical, and don't affect people's everyday life. And I think people would be much more responsive to a party that talked about, listen, I can help you with getting a bus to a job. I can help you with getting a job. I can help you with healthcare associated with that job. I can help you with the wages for that job that you're taking the bus to. Maybe I can help you with your child being able to get educated at a public school. I can help your community look like the rest of the community, and you won't look like a sore thumb as compared to where everybody else. I just think those are messages and derivations of that are much more effective than kind of where sometimes the Democrats are. And Shan is right. Local politicians know that better because they talk to people all the time. Mm-hmm. Those of us in Tallahassee spend much of our time fighting these theoretical battles because that's what's in front of us. Like the bus route isn't in front of me when I'm in Tallahassee. What's in front of me when I'm in Tallahassee is book banning and abortion and Confederate statues and these things that are really important, but they're just kind of fights that kind of have no resolution at the end. They're just fights that are going to keep happening. And Shan is correct. The things that she knocks on doors and talks to people about and people come to, that's where I think the messages ought to be. And Shan also said something. I was going to say this. I think the best elected officials are organizers. And I'm even saying that knowing that I wasn't one. I always appreciate and like and support organizers who go on and want to run for elected office, because that's the origin story that I think is the best origin story for a good elected official. Someone that knows, someone that has done it, someone that has worked, someone that people trust, and then they're going to get a promotion. I don't, sometimes it happens in different ways and you end up getting an elected official who's just happy to be elected. Organizers aren't like that. They are there and they're giving people hell when they get elected. And they know that they've been, they know that people ain't getting the resources they should be. I I say this all the time. If you represent a community that is oppressed and depressed, namely Black folks, I don't want my elected official getting along with everybody. If you represent Black people and you get along with everybody, I'm not interested, to be quite honest, because you ought not be happy with the state of affairs. You ought not be happy with the distribution of assets and probably the gentrification and probably the crime and probably the police prep. You shouldn't be happy with that. And I always appreciate those elected officials who started out as organizers, because they always come at the problem at the right way. So, but I say that to say the messaging, I think, ought to be around issues that you can actually benefit from every day, rather than these, law review articles that Democrats like to argue about all the time.
But, I'm going to say this. I have to give the state party its kudos, because there is an incumbent. There's a whole incumbency process, and they support. That doesn't happen on the local level. And so unfortunately, that's why I feel local politics get lost in the sauce, because they're focused on the state organizes around incumbency. Okay, we like what we got. We got our fighters. Our fighters are going to keep coming back and fighting for us, regardless of what that fight may look like. And they don't do the same on the local. And so when I got elected last year, I had to make it clear, right? It's either y'all going to come out and endorse our right, which y'all may say your bylaws don't allow it, but there's always other ways to endorse, right? If I'm making sure I'm highlighting the work of an elected official who is our local commissioner or mayor who doing great things in the community that you support, the party supports, we're going to highlight that. We're going to make it known to the party. We're going to let everybody know exactly what's happening. And I think because you'd be surprised, and I think that's what's missing. The fact that a true local elected who feels supported will support and do what it takes to, on the state and national level, they're going to show up in Tallahassee. They're going to say, I can help you get reelected here locally without, and I think that's the piece that's missing. It's more of us local electeds than there are state in our regions, right? So if you support us on a local level, we will make sure we can support you on a state and a national level, right? So if when I come to you as the commissioner and I go to my congressman and I say, I need this, and this, if you can deliver on that, then the party doesn't have to focus there, because it's more of us than there are of them on the state and the national level. That means that if we're getting treated and we're getting our needs met, whatever that may look like, sometimes it may not necessarily be resources. It could be just you going and writing and proposing a bill for us, right? That means my elected did what it takes in Tallahassee or in DC. I feel confident enough to support them here because they took my local issues and took it to where they were. I think if the party starts realizing the importance of us commissioners, school board, mayors on a local level, they can spend less time, because if we feel supported on a local level, then we're going to support everybody else. I think that's a missing piece. And I don't know that anyone is bold enough or brave enough to really push their DEC to that, right? We do a lot of, hey, come out and organize for this, whether it's the congressman that's running. But can we keep that same momentum? There is an election that happens every single year, right? And so we focus on gubernatorial every 2 years and presidential every 4 years. I made it clear. There is an election every year. So again, shout out to organizations like Black Voters Matter that knows there is an election every year. You've got to be organized in 365, not just every 2 years and every 4 years. And so I think that's how the party, and I don't know that it's messaging, I think that's how the party can do a dynamic shift. The other party realizes it. The other party puts money in their local elections. I promise you that. I see somebody just lost their re-election, and they had been in office for 10 years. Somebody just lost their re-election because the party put money into them. And so I think that's what has to happen, is that there is an intentional focus on the electeds on the local level who are going to advocate, and let's say, for instance, a school board member. School board member has to work with their state legislature in order to get funds. They have to work with their congressperson in order to get bills passed, in order to get funding requests. Oh, it's more board members, it's more school board members, right? And so if I feel served, so I think that the messaging piece is one thing, but I think focusing on the local level is what it's really going to take to be able to bring the change that we want to see in the party.
Well, we would have to have a different podcast on
that's
the party.
That's a separate.
Because I don't think anyone would accuse me of being an apologist for the Florida Democratic Party.
Session conversation.
But I think you're right on a lot of that. I would only say Republicans have more money than God.
Yeah.
And so they get to dump it in lots of places that unfortunately we can't. But that does not
Citizens United.
But it doesn't excuse our failure to do things local, because that's quite frankly all we have. And I'm with you. We ought to be, we've got school board, we have lots of city mayors. I mean, the cities are where we have the power as Democrats. And I am with you that the fact that we don't leverage and organize better around that is an issue, but that's not my ministry.
That's for another podcast.
We continue.
Because there are a whole lot of politicians and not enough public servants in this work. And it shows when push comes to shove and we're in this authoritarian space now. Given the success,
it's finding that balance, Ryan, because you are supposed to be a politician, right? Like that is your technicality.
But you have individuals who are obsessed with power and not serving their community.
Well,
they're worried about keeping their jobs.
Politicians, I know Tallahassee well. I don't know the local stuff, but there's people go to Tallahassee for different reasons. Some people go to yell and scream. Mm-hmm. Some people go to just compromise and bring back whatever they can and are willing to do anything to get it. And then there's some that are in the middle. And I'm not saying anyone is right or wrong, but there is a huge spectrum of why people go and why they're sent there and where they come from and that kind of deal. And it affects some of this stuff. But yeah.
Which leads me to my next question. Given the success of the Public Service Commission races in Georgia, it was very clear not a lot of people knew what those roles were and how that connected to the predatory rate hikes and utility bills. Florida has this same issue where you have these utility companies like Duke Energy that like to operate a certain way in the state. Are you finding, Sean, after post-November 4th, are you finding a more renewed focus on local elections? We already kind of talked about the need to build this pipeline, right? That centers local electeds versus the other way around, right? Are you finding a renewed interest? We had a lot of local wins across the board at the city level. Detroit got its first Black female mayor. There are a lot of Black women winning in smaller municipalities that probably wouldn't have made the news otherwise. In addition to obviously the state races that occurred on November 4th. Are you seeing that renewed focus? And the second piece of this, can we translate this to our judiciary, like our courts, our state attorneys' races, our state Supreme Court? A lot of these state Supreme Courts, in my day job at BVM, I have to keep track of how those courts are falling in line, if you will, with the Supreme Court in DC, especially around gerrymandering and mid-year redistricting.
Yeah, I mean, I not anything that's statewide, the answer is no. I would tell you, Georgia has 2 United States senators who are Democrats. So, I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves about the Public Service Commission and how great that was. They already have fertile ground. They already have statewide elected Democrats in Georgia. We don't. We ain't got nothing. And so we have a math problem right now that hopefully we can get around, but we just have a $1.4 million vote deficit the minute the polls open to the other side that we have to make up somehow as Democrats. So the statewide races are tough. But I do see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel on these local races just because of those results that we already had. Certainly the shutdown, and also just kind of what's going on with the other side. I mean, for once, I think Democrats have maybe learned this lesson. Just shut up and let them mess up. And I kind of get the sense that we are doing that a little. I mean, just chill out. Like, let them.
Virginia did that. They let her mess up.
Like, I think we're somewhat getting that, but I've certainly felt a renewed sense in these local races that, but the problem is I'm involved in some of these donor spaces, and everyone wants the next governor in their living room. Everyone wants the next senator at their beach house in Miami. So when it comes down to it, there's going to be an enormous amount of money spent in governor's races and Senate races and statewide races that when those races are done, there will be nothing to show for it. And that money could be spent on local issues, local elected officials, school boards, in creating the next generation of the leaders in this state. It could be spent on infrastructure, as Shan was talking about. It could be spent on organizing on the ground. I mean, that money could be spent in different ways, but unfortunately, the donors, sometimes it's hard to convince a donor to spend the money on infrastructure when this amazing, charismatic candidate is right in front of them. And that's kind of where the money goes. But in Florida, especially because we live here, we know it. It costs $50, $60, $70 million to run for the U.S. Senate. It costs, $50, $60 million to run for governor. Mm-hmm. And I just always wonder what the day after the election, what do we have to show for it if it's a loss? And
now, Sean,
I would just hope we had an infrastructure kind of that we could have something to show for it.
Now, Sean, that Public Service Commission race took a lot of organizing on the ground. The two senators had nothing to do with that, okay?
But y'all got math. Y'all got math working for you. We don't
do that.
I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying Florida's a long way away from that.
Oh yeah, we've got layers of problems.
So let's also present that question to you, Commissioner Rose, but in another twist as well. We saw, as Ryan stated, we saw wins in Detroit. We saw wins in Virginia. We saw wins in Maryland. We even had, Zoran Mamdani, it's now the mayor.
Don't forget Mississippi. They broke the state supermajority. Mm-hmm. I didn't think that would happen.
Mississippi.
Not in my lifetime.
Ever in the history of mankind. But also in the midst of all of that, even on a national news level, it was also mentioned how in the city of Orlando, we now are sitting in an all blue, as they like to say, all blue city council, thanks to your win, as well as Tom Keene. So, how do we carry the momentum of the wins that were gathered in Orlando, as well as the possibility of a Democratic mayor in the city of Miami in December? Hint, hint, runoff. Y'all need to go vote. How do we carry that over into 26, but more importantly, 27? Because the thing that people aren't realizing is that the next big, huge municipal election year is 2027, where we're looking at Jacksonville municipal elections. We're looking at Tampa municipal elections. And we're also looking at the city of Orlando again, this time with the mayoral seat up for grabs.
I think so it's a couple of things. I think it's having real life conversations about moving our communities forward. And so that was a big part of my message. Like, we can't look at the past. We can't go backwards. We can't look at the mistakes. We can point them out. You can talk about them. And I think that's where there's a right messaging is based on who your audience is. There's a right way and there's a wrong way in telling we can't go back, and we won't go back, and just exploring it. So for me, it was just communication, right? It was just, I communicated in ways that people have never seen communication. Whether I was doing a reel and I was showing you, here, look, here's what I just did. Okay, this is what your local government does. Or sometimes it's the responding to messages and say, hey, that's not us. That's this level of government. I think just community engagement and communication, continued communication, is how we continue to win. But, you know, somebody asked me, a donor asked me that I met for the first time, there is no such thing as there should not be a such thing as partisan on the local level, which could be why, because they are nonpartisan seats, which could be why. And I found out after the conversation, these were strong Democrats that asked that question. And so I realized in that moment, I was like, for me, I said, I'll talk to people on both sides of the aisle because that's what it's going to take to get done. My values are my values. How I feel, what I believe are those, and that's it. But in order to serve a community, you have to be able to go to the person in power to be able to have, here's my need, here's what our community needs. And so the person said it, and I didn't realize that it does make, and so it might go back to part of this conversation that we've been having, why the party doesn't get involved on the local level as much as they should get involved on the local level, because commission, and I didn't think commissions shouldn't be based on party, because you have to serve those people that live in your community, whether they're Democrats, they're Republicans, they're MPAs, they're the Green Party, the Libertarian Party. And I never thought about it like that. And so I think it's how do we just have candid conversations with the best candidates? And, Ryan, you touched on judicial. What I do believe, I think, and the word politician, can you play a politician in order to get the things the community needs? I think we have to start learning who candidates are and not who they're affiliated with. And so our community could lose some really great people who unfortunately have said, well, I got to be part of this group. I may have to be part of the Tiger Bays in order to get the support that I need. And I'm just using that as an example here in Orlando. I got to be part of Tiger Bays. But the perception is that, well, Tiger Bays is a specific party. No, Tiger Bay are individuals who could write checks to help support a campaign. And I'm just using that as an example because every community has that. And so I think we've got to start learning candidates in our communities. When we start talking about judicial races and we talk about the ones, you get to learn a person and not the club that they're associated with, you can see a shift in our community. We can see crime rates go down. We could see a change in, decriminalizing our judicial, our juvenile justice system, and how do we change the individuals who are representing us. So I think that's going to be a key moving forward, is getting to know the person, the candidate, and not so much the party, because sometimes, not so much the party, the clubs that they belong to. Because we had an individual here who was part of Federalist Society here in Orlando who people hated. But when you got to get to know the person is not who the club they belong to. They were part of that club because that club was in order for them to gain the power that they need to be able to serve the community the way they saw fit. So I think that's something that we have to start looking at, is who are the candidates? Who are the individuals? Are they part of, sometimes people, and I'll use a divine nine, sometimes people will join it because that's just the best way to go, right? I want to be popular at the time, so I may join a club. So I think that's going to be key going to 26 and 27, is really getting to know the candidate and saying, okay, what choices have they made? How have they moved an agenda forward for the working poor, for the poor people, for the Black community, and really say that that's where, because I think that's how we shift our communities. I think that's how we get better representation on all levels of government, and in all areas. It's the individual. I'll give you an example. Here, we had a public defender's race, and it literally came down to Black versus white. It really did, right? And so there was this like, well, is the Black person going to represent the Black community better, or is the white person? Voters spoke on that, even though here in Orange County we have a strong minority whole as far as the voting population. The voting Black minorities are more than they are of the Caucasians in the community. And so it showed, okay, that's who people put their trust in. They put their trust in that candidate and what that candidate represents. So I think that's what 26, 27 looks like.
Absolutely. So we are going to give the last question once again to you. So key backstory to the last question, and it is the last question that we always ask on this podcast, but there's a key backstory to why it means a lot for Commissioner Rose to answer this last question. So shout out to the good people over at Black Ink Crew in Orlando. Those kind ladies and gentlemen, they had a location actually here in Jacksonville. Commissioner Rose as one of the key individuals to help get that location, not just in Orlando, but also here in Jacksonville. And at their weekend grand opening that they had in 2022, I was invited to come to the grand opening. Was hanging out. Everybody was there. Anybody that you could possibly think of that was like on the Black Ink Crew TV show, all the things, yeah, they were there. So I'm there. I'm hanging out, and Shan comes up to me and is like, "Hey, so this whole BLKFLA thing that you keep talking about, I don't think you really believe in the mission." And I was like, "But no, this is my thing. Like this is what I hold near and dear to heart. If you believe in it, you'll get it tatted on you." And so sat in this chair, shout out to Power. I sat in the chair with Power, and many of our elected officials, organizers in the state of Florida, our Black politicals, everybody has seen this tattoo on my arm of the logo for this podcast and for this movement of BLKFLA. Y'all all have Shan to blame for that.
I mean, you were talking to me about that tattoo pretty often.
Yes. I was like, I feel like I want to get it tatted. I was like, but no, I ain't gonna. Shan was like, no, like
just do it.
If you believe in it, you just gonna do it. I was like,
no,
just go ahead and get it tatted. And so our final question for you is, of course, the final question that we always ask for the podcast, which is, what is your vision of a Florida where Black people are able to live in freedom, equity, and authenticity?
I'm doing it right now. I'm creating the opportunity for, let's say, I said it best, not feeling like prisoners in our own communities, being able to have access to, whether it's to your government, to your local government, to your state government, to your federal government, being able to say, I can freely be myself, like you said, authentic, but I want to say the empowerment, being able to ensure that whatever role you play in our community, you have access to and you feel empowered to. So if you're the school bus driver, you feel empowered to be able to say, hey, we need better buses. If you live in a community and you say, I run a business, being able to say, I have access to contracts and I know how to access those contracts. If I live in a community where there's high crime, being able to go to a city commission meeting to say, hey, you need to address the crime issue. So being able to, what that means to me is the empowerment and access to resources and the freedom, not feeling like you're only welcome in certain rooms. I think that access to every room, no matter what that room looks like, no matter, whether it's being able to meet the governor or being able to say, I know exactly who my police chief is. So I think that's what it is for me, the empowerment and access to.
And you have really displayed a lot of that empowerment, whether through Change for the Community, whether working with the city of Eatonville, or also working as the city commissioner in the city of Orlando.
District 5.
District 5, D5. Let's get it. Listen, Ryan, I think we did a really good episode this time around.
Hey, as always.
Listen, I think
it was a buck around here.
Listen, keep it all the way a buck $1.50. Sean, as always, thank you for coming through.
No, happy to. I was happy to listen to Shan. That was I like to hear what motivates people, and I hadn't heard all that before, so that was good.
Listen, and I think we got a real deal, real life lesson in local politics from our local elected official that's holding it down for the crown in D5. So, as always, this is the team over at BLKFLA showing y'all love and appreciation for joining us on this BLKFLA experience. Stay free, stay blessed, and as always, continue to get acquainted with greatness. We are out.
Revolution was a movie, I be theme music. Time to ignite what I spit is like a fluid. Stepping into it, fixed raised, such a glorious design. Marching into the biggest fight of our lives. Time to spoil the revolution.